How's everybody doing this evening? It's been a little while, but we're courtesy of Sports Record this evening. We got Justin Walters here. We got Justin Gamble, Wilson Tarpe Jr. And look, we want to start breaking down these little by little. A lot of changes. I mean, up to the minute changes, even signings that occurred as late as today within the NFC East. That's where we will be starting. So I'll go ahead and throw the disclaimer out now. Some of y'all are going to be mad about your teams. There's time for anything that we say that could be proven wrong, or if it's proven right, then it is what it is, and that's how life goes sometimes. We will start with the Dallas Cowboys.
Sorry. Sorry, I watched you guys last episode and I saw somebody comment already that Justin hates everybody or everything Dallas Cowboys. So it's just funny we start there.
I mean, I felt like why not start it off with a bang, right?
Yeah, like it.
All right, so we got the Dallas Cowboys. We know we'll take a look at their offseason. Where you guys want to start with them? Their free agent signings from the beginning of free agency up to this point, and you want to start in the draft, and then we can take a look at the roster. What do you guys want to start at?
You might as well go in order.
Okay, yeah, let's go free agency.
All right, give me 1 second. Y'all can start, and I'll go ahead and put this on screen. What's going on, Jesse? Said that's mostly true. Talk about Justin's deep disdain for the team that he roots for. But y'all go ahead and kick it off. I'm going to go ahead and get this up on screen. Just give me a second.
Okay. In my opinion, I think the free agency was just a weird situation. I think for them, they lived this whole offseason with the pain of losing that 49ers game. And I think they just based everything off of, okay, Connor Williams was a problem. We got to blame Leo Collins. I don't know what the Leo Collins issue was, but it's just that. And then the hate for Amari Cooper, which was surprising. That was part of the CeeDee Lamb plan part 2. They started off last season with this whole CeeDee Lamb's our star, despite Amari Cooper making $20 million and being the better player, and watching Hard Knocks where Amari Cooper was showing CeeDee Lamb how to run routes. And yet somehow we want CeeDee Lamb to be our guy, which is fine, but I just feel like they rushed that process. And just that, not to mention the issues with the offensive coordinator having a basic stagnant offense that was it wasn't even made for what they were trying to do. And I think that caught up with them, and that 49ers loss really hurt them, getting out physical and embarrassed in some ways, and I think they came to this offseason and they got rid of a couple players, and we'll get to the draft later, but I'll stop there just to let Gamble go. But just some of the losses really were shocking to me. The players they let go, and they killed Vander Esch all season, and then re-signed them. And it's just I think they're really dependent on a lot of players from last year's draft to step up to make up for this year's draft. I think if based off last year's roster, they need Kelvin Joseph, they need Malik Hooker. Malik Hooker wasn't drafted, obviously. Signing Malik Hooker, they need Vander Esch to step up. They need Jabril Cox. So, Jabril Cox and Kelvin Joseph are two of the players they're counting on more than anything. That's going to determine this season almost more than some of the draft picks this year.
Right. They added James Washington. That's okay. I mean, you lost Cooper. I think so. Looking at some of the notes and stuff we wrote down and we talked about. I have do we trust Kellen Moore? First off, did the Cowboys actually get better in any specific spots? Do they look better on paper or worse? I don't know if you can say better. I also don't know if you can say they got significantly worse. But it's almost like they have to maximize everything on their roster right now in order for them to be good. And Kellen Moore has to, coach out of his mind. We haven't even gotten to the draft yet, but they lost some pass rushers. They signed Dante Fowler, who's okay. But you're right. Their off-season moves, their free agency stuff is a little interesting. It doesn't really, I don't know. I guess when you combine it with the draft so far, it doesn't look like they had a specific plan or they knew what they were doing to, really become a better team. But we'll get to the draft right here too, so we can do that and see what's up. But yeah, the Cowboys are a frustrating study for sure, and I'm not even a Cowboy fan, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on what you guys said, I think they weirdly held serve which is like they got rid of things like you said. I'm gonna say Walters and Gamble because I'm not gonna confuse myself the rest of the evening.
That's fair.
When Walters was saying like it felt like it did feel like they took that playoff loss like maybe too emotional in terms like instead of just being like, hey, the strength of that team beat what used to be the strength of our team. And instead of like, if you have the proper mindset is they like the team that you lost to beat you with what they deemed a priority, right? You used to deem your offensive line a priority. So just get back to doing that. In my mind, that's all you had to get back to doing was, hey, let's strengthen up a strength. We don't have to make wholesale changes there, but let's strengthen up a strength. And instead, I don't know what to think about the offensive line, honestly. But again, like the tight ends, that's cool. I have no issue with that. I'm not going to knock anybody for adding depth on their defense. You can never get enough edge rushers. I can't knock anybody for that. Like 17 games, a lot of tough offenses to defend. I can't knock you. You couldn't afford to lose Malik Hooker. Like that's what you couldn't afford to lose. And I guess why I'm saying I felt they held service weirdly is that because like you said, Gamble, even with what they did, just looking at free agency, so many other things have to go right. There's no room for error.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why it's like they held serve, but it's just weird. It's frustrating. I guess that'd be the best way to say it, right? So I guess you guys are ready to move on to the draft portion of their offseason, which is fine.
Before we go there, just another thought I had. Sorry, that's wrong. Just some old Dallas anger hit me. But no, just I think with Dallas, it just I feel like what was it? You know, Randy Gregory was the combination of Gregory and Lawrence fit well together. Not saying Randy Gregory had great stats, or whatever, but that combination of the flair and the high ceiling that Gregory had, along with the solid on the other side, and then like I said, defensively, you're counting on Diggs to have another career season, which you don't get 10 interceptions every year. Like it doesn't work that way. The ball doesn't bounce your way consistently. So, you know, some of those times when he was beaten, the ball didn't get thrown. Those might go against you, and he might have 5 interceptions, and now his value is way different. You know, you're counting on Micah Parsons to have an all-world season again. Like, that's a lot to ask for. Asking Jaron Kearse, who Dallas got off the scrap heap, to come in and have a solid season, and all of a sudden Dallas is looking at him like he's, you know, Cam Chancellor or something. Like they speak about him like he's at that level. It's a lot of things you're asking for to remain the same while also improving in other areas. And then you lost some players, like regardless of what Randy Gregory's stats was, he was important to Dallas. You know, he was a guy that was homegrown and they put the work in, and he was starting to improve. I think they're just asking for a lot, you know. And then offensively, you know, you took a step backwards. Cooper was your best guy, regardless of what anyone wants to say. Teams came and they game planned for Cooper. So the little bit of stats that Lamb gave you, that wasn't as the number one option as teams were fearing him. Teams were put their number one corner on Amari Cooper. You know, I think that's another thing. The running back issue is what it is. Offensive line, I think another thing was, you know, they believe in Terrence Steele, and that's fine. If they think Terrence Steele is a good offensive lineman, that's fine, and he can replace Leo Collins. But you got to understand, Tyron Smith isn't playing 16 games. So you need 3 offensive tackles. You know what I'm saying? So that's another thing that they don't bring up is Terrence Steele playing left tackle / right tackle along with Leo Collins. They would have played it together as much as Tyron Smith would have been on the field anyway. You know, and now you brought, you know, and we'll get to the draft picks. I just think, you know, they got rid of Connor Williams for, you know, with cause, I guess. But I just feel like you made a lot of reactionary moves and you didn't think it through. And that's what bothered me about the offseason. I'm sure I'll vent again after the draft.
All right. You mentioned the draft. Onwards we go. So you guys can go ahead and get to it. I'm just going to share, you know, have these picks up on screen. You know, as you guys see, first round, Tyler Smith, the 24th overall pick. Second round, it took Williams, edge out of Mississippi, Jalen Tolbert. In round 3, Jake Ferguson, tight end out of Wisconsin. We saw them sign 2 tight ends in free agency. Here's a third. Matt Waletzko from North Dakota. And you got Deron Bland, corner out of Fresno State. Damone Clark, so back-to-back years of LSU linebackers. If I remember correctly, John Ridgeway, defensive tackle out of Arkansas. And Devin Harper, linebacker out of Oklahoma State. So, you know, Floor is yours, guys.
I'll start. Yeah. I think what stands out here, like if you're just a fan tuning in, for instance, let's simplify this real quick. The first 3 picks are all that matter right now. Those 3 players are going to play. Everyone beneath that is not going to play, maybe for a while or ever. We don't know. Damon Clark from LSU, he's the guy that has the neck fusion thing, right? So we don't know if he'll come back and play ever or how soon. So let's just simplify it real quick. The first 3 picks matter. Tyler Smith, a lot of people thought was a reach, but he's got athleticism. He's got measurables. He's a long, strong dude with, he's a knee bend. He's amazing. He's an amazing talent. He had raw tape, and that's probably an understatement. He had bad tape, in a lot of games. He's a projection. They're going to put him at left guard, right? Is it left guard or right guard?
Yeah.
One of them. Guard. Left guard. Okay. And you got Sam Williams, who probably was a top 15 talent from Ole Miss, but he dropped because of off the field stuff. He's an awesome edge player. That's great. He'll start. Jalen Tolbert, he'll play, but I think it's important to talk about what the Cowboys lost in Amari Cooper. And like Amari Cooper, even when he didn't produce, he has the talent to be the best wide receiver in the entire NFL. So teams are always game planning for him. He's always going to draw the number 1. He's always the guy that people are scared of no matter what. Now you got Gallup, who's coming off an injury. CeeDee Lamb, who's not scaring people. He's a good player, but he's not Cooper. And then you got Tolbert, who's going to play now. He's a good player as well, but I think at this point you got 3 guys that are like really good potential number 2s at receiver, but they lost Coop, who's that one guy. So I like Tolbert. Yeah, he's a 3rd rounder, so you can't expect, anything crazy, but it's just when you look at like the pieces that they added in the big picture, Tolbert doesn't make anything that much better. And these draft picks are good, but it's like they lost players in spots where it's just like they kind of reloaded them now. So that's what when I was asking earlier, like, did they get better anywhere? I don't really know if they did. And the draft didn't really help. Ruckus, you said this to me on Twitter a little while ago. You said the draft could look okay, but not when you combine it with their offseason moves and free agency and everything like that. Like it just they reloaded in certain spots, but it's not as good, and it didn't make them better. So I don't know. They drafted good players, is what I think, but I'm not sure it's going to make them a better team.
Walter, you're up.
All right. Now he said that very well. I agree with all that. No, I agree with that. But again, like this draft would have been a great draft if you kept Amari and Leo Collins, you could have lived with losing Randy Gregory, but if you kept the 3 main guys you lost in the offseason and threw this draft on top of it, it's a totally different draft. Your Tyler Smith has time he can slide that guard, and there's no threat of him having to go to tackle. And if he, it's just allowed guys to mature, guys to work their way along the line. But now you're throwing these guys in and you're saying, let's go. Jalen Tolbert, Michael Gallup might not be back till week 6. So Jalen Tolbert could have slid in that Michael Gallup spot with Cooper next to Cooper Lamb, and things would be fine. But now you're asking him to be, asking him and James Washington to be Gallup and Amari. And that, or you're asking Lamb to be, it's just you're asking a lot of these guys, and then Williams, I like Sam Williams a lot, but Sam Williams more of he's not a true speed rusher. I think he can win. He's one of those guys, I think he wins with his first move, and then he has to start going to second, third, it gets a little hairy. And again, I think he'll be good because Ole Miss put him in some really tough positions. You're lined up head up with a 3-man line and you got to win, and he was doing a good job winning. And I think what Dallas is putting on him is he has to be a 10-sack guy day 1, and it doesn't happen very often. And I think he'll be a good player, but you're just asking a lot of everybody. And then Tolbert, they're putting a lot on his plate. Tyler Smith, he led college in holding, so how is that going to transfer the pros? And everyone says, going from tackle to guard is easy. Well, it ain't that easy. It's still another position. It's still another position. Okay, instead of the footwork, they hike the ball on the guys on you. They hike the ball on the guys right on top of you. Maybe he can get to the second level because he's an athlete and block and that type of thing. I think my issue with Dallas was I feel like they came to this draft with a card that said best DN, best wide receiver, best offensive tackle / guard, and that was all. It didn't matter who was there. Jerry was holding the card. It was like, all right, round 1, tackle guard. The big 3 were gone. Cross, Aquanu and
Carson
Evan Neal.
Neal,
They were
Aquanu,
they actually had him as their fourth best lineman. They had Tyler Smith as their fourth. So I think they came into this draft thinking tackle/guards. A guard who can move the tackle when Tyron's gone. Like that was their thought process. That's it. And then they needed an end, and I guess Dan Quinn loved Sam Williams. And again, getting Williams there, there's nothing wrong with getting him there because we were really high on him for a while. So there's nothing wrong with that pick. But it was one of those things. The thing about it, they just walked into this draft saying, I don't care who's there, we're taking these positions, not even these players, these positions.
Yeah.
We saw Dallas's draft board, and they had Lewis Seen as their last first rounder, and they had Tyler Smith as their first second rounder, and they still didn't take him. So, what was the purpose of the draft board? They just have a weird way of doing things, man. And they have this weird way of things seeming to work out somewhat in a weird way, like the Mike Parsons pick and things like that. But they're just things seem to. There's no plan behind it. It just happens, And then, just like it's funny because this draft resembles last year a lot. You had your picks, and then you had the let's go pick is just like they picked Josh Ball last year, and they took a chance on the offensive lineman from Marshall that who knows where he is, and he's on the team somewhere. They took the corner. They took Nathan Wright last year, same as the Deron Bland pick, with risk on a corner late. The Damone Clark pick is the same as the Jabril Cox pick. And what's funny was this year, Dallas fans are saying, oh, this Damone Clark pick, that's going to be what makes this draft great. The same thing we did last year with Jabril Cox. But they played the same position.
Yeah.
Next to Mike Parsons. It's like, well, you know what? When Damone Clark comes back, it's going to be the ultimate win. Jabril Cox slid because he was injured. And it's like, at what point do you have to have a plan? It's cool. Okay, we'll see next year. Who do they pick next year? But LSU linebacker who's injured, they take in the fifth round that you try to make up for your first round pick. You just wonder what the plan. Do we want to win tomorrow, or are we trying to win 2 years from now? And with the players they have and the way they act, it seems like it's Super Bowl or bust. But I don't really. Yeah, it's just.
Thanks, Kid Ray. Well, it's hard to narrow down like a specific strategy or like tendency for what they're trying to build. Like it's like building a puzzle and like pputting the correct shape piece in there, but like it doesn't match the rest of the painting. So it's like, cool, it fits for now, but it doesn't make it complete. Like it's not going to work. Like, yeah, like you said, like they came in here, they're like, we'll get this player, this player, this player. Yeah, they'll play the same positions as what you want them to do or with the guys you lost, but you're not building a good team. And on paper, you're not better than you were last year. And we saw how last year turned out. You weren't as and yeah, Parsons and Diggs are not going to have like they're going to be great players, but they're not going to have the same years that they did last year. People know who they are now. We have tape on Diggs. Now we know how to beat him. Now we know what Parsons is going to be. He's not a rookie who's going to shock us this time. We know what's up when we play the Cowboys. So you're not going to F with us the same way you did last year. Look, Cowboys could be good. Hopefully Kellen Moore takes a step. Hopefully Dak keeps getting better. Hopefully Gallup comes back good, but like you're relying on a first-round pick who probably shouldn't have been a first-round pick according to a lot of people. You're relying on Jalen Tolbert, a third-rounder, to fill in for Gallup while he's gone. And then while Gallup's gone, you got James Washington filling in that 3 spot. Like, the offense is going to take a step back. The defense looks okay, but the pass rush might struggle for a little bit. It's really hard to say, like, they got better and they had a specific plan. And if this was their plan, like, how do you think you're going to get better? This, same theme over and over.
Right.
Yeah, I think y'all pretty much knocked that
the
one
Cowboys
down.
Is what it boils down to.
Yeah, like
Man.
that's I guess that's the thing. That's why Walters is always upset. Like it doesn't make sense. Like if you look, like we just had them up on screen, right? Those look like two separate. You wouldn't imagine they're from the same team, the same year. They don't marry each other, right? We're gonna look at a couple of these teams, a couple other teams in the division. I know one that comes to mind, like off top, that where they marry each other perfectly. Because ideally, free agency, obviously, everyone doesn't always get it right, but ideally, you go address the things that you need, so you don't have to draft for need. Ideally, because the worst thing you could do is in this situation, which I feel like is what happened with Tyler Smith. You went in there like it has to be a tackle that plays guard. But because of how you went in there looking, you probably left some other options on the table because you move that onto the top of your list priority-wise, when there are probably some people lower in the draft in terms of what you needed that may have done it better and weren't as wrong. But you were like, I need it because whatever was in your mind, like, this is priority one. No, relax, take a deep breath. It can be a high priority, but if you're up that high, look at the board. Just look at the board. You were up that freaking high. Not to knock, and I'm not knocking Jalen Tolbert or, James Washington. The wide receivers in his draft, you were picking 24. You let Amari Cooper leave. Why? Malik Hooker, you got lucky last year. He's trying to get his feet underneath him health-wise. There were safeties at the end of the first round. No one even started messing with that position yet. Why? You could, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just could have got great value if it was something where, like, even if you went a free agency and alongside Malik Hooker, you took another veteran with depth that could play in a pinch, you would have felt okay. But you went in there, now you're going to ask Tyler Smith, who probably definitely needs some time. Oh, by the way, because we got manhandled last year in the playoffs, we need you to be you in 3 years. Best case scenario right now.
Right. And that's not going to happen.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then people are going to get mad at the kid, and the kid didn't do anything. He didn't draft himself. Like, his issues were his issues. But you decided that, screw the issues. I need this here, and you're the new great Dallas offensive lineman. That's what we need you to be.
You know what I wonder? I wonder if those were the three positions. What if you switch them around and they went a different because I think the problem with that was it was the tackle/guard thing. It wasn't just a guard. If they were saying, okay, we need a guard. Now you can get a guy like whatever. I like Dylan Parham myself, but he could say you took him in the third round. Okay, so now you went guard third round, and now it's first round. You could either grab Jermaine Johnson, or you could have moved up a spot or two and got Treylon Burks or something like that. Okay, and then second round went whatever other position. Like, you just wonder what the value of different players you could have got if you changed the puzzle pieces around. And I think to take yourself better today, I think I like Sam Williams, but is Jermaine Johnson a better player tomorrow? Because Jermaine Johnson was a predicted top 10 pick. And you get him at 20, 26, 24, because he was there. And then second round you had Pickens. You know what I'm saying? If your draft was Jermaine Johnson, Pickens, and Parham, or whatever the other best guard was, Ingram, how's that look tomorrow if you have a game tomorrow? That's the thing is I don't think they consider.
All right, we're gonna let the Cowboys live for a moment. Move on to the Giants because we can go on the Cowboys all forever. All right,
we can let Justin rant about them forever.
Yeah,
sorry, I don't know where it comes from, man. I don't know where it comes from.
The sad thing, like, looking at the pieces, I get it. Couldn't be me, but I get it. That's frustrating.
They're in the right division for it, though. At least they're in the right division to pull it off.
That's a whole nother thing for another day. I'm gonna let that. I'm not gonna bash the division right now at this moment. I'm gonna be kind or whatnot. All right, on to the Giants, where they got things started and is a new regime, and it felt kind of weird watching the Giants kind of be adults in the offseason to a degree. But we'll start with free agency. You guys tell me what you like and didn't like from the Giants in free agency. Let me get that up for you guys real quick.
Go ahead, Ruckus.
Giants are weird because you feel like they threw in the towel saying, okay, we're rebuilding to a degree, and then you watch them put complete faith behind Daniel Jones. It's just it's not a bad roster. I think free agency, they didn't do anything crazy, which was the smart thing to do. Like, we're not winning tomorrow and probably not the day after. Like, it's going to be a while. So why put some bad money out there? Gettleman put some bad money out there already that they're still trying to shake off. So let's just slow play it, save yourself for next year. And they knew they had the 2 high draft picks. So let's just get ready for the draft. And I think that was a smart thing to do. I still don't get the rush to get rid of Bradbury. I don't understand it fully, but unless you're really not trying to win, I don't understand that. But the Giants aren't terrible, but it's not a good roster. It's not a good roster, but you could see some building blocks. Yes.
Yeah, it's getting strong in like certain spots for sure. And the draft helped that too, like kind of.
Exactly.
I don't know. The Wan'Dale Robinson pick. When we get to that, you're gonna have to hold me back because I can't get past that pick. But yeah, you're right. Like the offseason was okay. They didn't do anything crazy. They look like they added some depth players. They added some guys that are gonna help, but nothing that really moves the needle or that changes their outlook. I'd say. I like the Jihad Ward pick. Big athletic dude. They might unlock him a little more than anyone else has, but at worst case, he's just another big athletic body. So I like that signing. And Matt Breida's good because when Saquon Barkley inevitably doesn't play 16 games, Breida can catch. He's speedy. He probably won't play 16 games either, but maybe they'll like meet in the weeks when they don't play and like overlap, like fill in for each other. So who knows?
Yeah, I just thought for me it was like having sat through watching the new regime come in and try to fix things. You can't do it all at once. So I thought it was a measured approach to it. They didn't go out and just hand a bunch of weird people money for no reason, just to be doing it. Like you said, with Breida and with the Wan'Dale Robinson, the weird thing is like you signed Richie James anyway. So like, why did you?
You got Tony and you got Shepard.
Yeah, and my whole thing is no disrespect to Wan'Dale Robinson, but like if Richie's healthy, you drafted somebody who might be worse than this, who might not be as talented or ready to play or ready to help you as this kid, right? So that was kind of weird. But again, I thought it was just, this is what I felt like that's what adults in the room do. You don't like another regime. The previous regime would have came in here and spent money on someone who couldn't possibly do the thing they probably used to do and giving them all the money for it. Because we saw them just do things that never made sense under the last regime. So to me, sometimes boring free agency times are fine for me, especially if it's a new regime.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you shouldn't be swinging for the fences. Like, sometimes you gotta knock down, you gotta break what was there before you got there, and then get stuff heading, going in your direction. So like you said, Gamble, I like Jihad Ward, Ricky Seals-Jones, Richie James, Matt Breida. They're all interesting just because in certain lights they're guys that could help you, or we've seen them all at times make plays in this league where it's not like you're wondering. It's just, are you somebody that could actually start consistently? And that's what it is for all of those guys. Is, can we get you guys to be consistent? And I feel like no one's mad about the talent. It's just, Breida, can you not fumble and stay healthy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the other things you bring to the table, people love those things. And it gives them somebody where on those days, you don't have to ask Saquon to be Superman. And it's somebody that's another person that's dynamic. Because sometimes, you saw, because of your quarterback situation at times, your offense kind of lacks explosion or whatnot, and Breida's one of them dudes where if he gets an alley or a seam somewhere, he can make something shake.
Boy can run.
Yeah, the boy can really run. Again, my biggest thing for him, and love him to death, hold on to the ball, kid, and you'll be fine. Just ball security. Like, you play a position where it's kind of important. That and health. But, we'll see. But the draft, though, because, some people were all over the place with the draft. Some people weren't. I was cool with their draft for most of it. There's a couple parts of their draft where I was like, but why? But I think it's the same parts of the draft you guys were like, but why about? So, Walters, you can start this one since Gamble started first on your team.
It's a weird draft, man. The first two picks were really good, like franchise changing, and and even just look at those first two picks, like you're putting Evan Neal across from Andrew Thomas, who's kind of starting to figure it out somewhat. So you're strong at both tackle positions. You had Ojulari had a solid season last year, and then you put him across from Thibodeau, and you're like, if you got two building blocks and two of the most important positions, your pass rushers and your tackles, and then it fell off quickly. Like that Wan'Dale Robinson pick is going to be something I'm not going to understand probably ever, because you passed on a lot of receivers that were there if you had to go receiver, and then Joshua Isbell pick. He was a tackle that they moved into guard. I think they took another North Carolina guard, which is funny considering one of the knocks on Sam Howell was, or the excuses for him, Sam Howell was his offensive line was terrible. You know, he had no supporting cast, but they took two of his offensive linemen. So that's kind of strange to make those two picks. I like the Darian Beavers pick, actually, the 6th round Cincinnati linebacker. I mean, he might have a chance to actually play early, you know. And then I think, what else did they take? I think Dane Belton, he's a solid safety. You know, he might have a chance to play because right now they have Julian Love starting safety, which he was a good corner at Notre Dame. So I can't even picture him playing strong safety. But, you know, he has a chance to contribute there. I just think this roster, it's a rebuild and they're slow. I think as we move along, you're going to see, like, okay, they have 4 or 5 guys they like and add another, hopefully 3 or 4 this year. And then next year, you know, depending on how bad they do, maybe you get a quarterback and some other things. I think it's just going to be a slow build, and that's all you can take it for. And hopefully, a couple of these guys can contribute. You know, in this draft, I think Bellinger actually is decent, and I like Cordell Flott. And they took him early. They took him early, way earlier than I expected. But you know, I think
he's long
like
too.
He was like 160 or something. But
yeah,
you know, those LSU guys can cover. I remember seeing him actually. He got reps, you know, that first year when they won the championship. You know, he got in a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
Last year he played like nickel, safety, and outside too. He does it all, which is cool.
Right. So I think there's talent there. You know, I just think that went really early for me.
Yeah. I think when you see like Thibodeau and Neo get picked first, you're thinking like, all right, Joe Schoen's a guy who's going to take athletes, big traits, athlete, like one way or another, he's going to take guys that are elite in some area or something like that, right? I was like, that's cool. Then he takes Wan'Dale Robinson, who's 5'8", 178 pounds. That's silly. While he picked him, Alec Pierce, George Pickens, Sky Moore, and even Tyquan Thornton are still on the board. So they could have had any of those players instead of Wan'Dale Robinson. And you think about it, they still have Sterling Shepard on the team. They added Richie James and Kadarius Toney. So now you add another guy who's 5'8", 180 pounds, and he has 27 and a half inch arms. So this guy's mini. He's mini. He's dynamic, but he's mini. Why wouldn't you take someone bigger? Why wouldn't you take one of these big guys? Then when they take, I think when they took Cordell Flott, no. When they took Wan'Dale Robinson, Brian Cook and Jaquan Brisker were still on the board as well. I think I did that all right. So you could have taken Cook or Brisker to start next to whatever and replace Julian Love. No, you don't do that. You add Robinson. And then when you take Cordell Flott, granted the boy can play, Nakobe Dean and Jalen Tolbert are on the board. So it's just interesting, like what you were talking about with the Cowboys, like what could have been. And I'm not saying what they did was wrong, but when you put it in perspective, like they took this guy and look who was still on the board, it might change some things. And they maybe could have had a better combination of draft picks and potential starters for this next year, where right now I'm looking at it like, did you really help Daniel Jones a whole lot? He's got Kenny Golladay, who can't run. And then he's got a bunch of little guys. And not only little guys, but like, do we think Wan'Dale's going to play outside? Do we think Kadarius Toney's going to play outside? Sterling Shepard is kind of a shell of himself. Like, who is helping Daniel Jones? I don't know. It's interesting. And moving forward, it kind of makes you think, like, what is Joe Schoen's philosophy? Is he going to if these were his picks, is he taking best player available? Is he taking for need? Because honestly, the Wan'Dale Robinson pick doesn't fit any of those things. So I can't figure out what he wants to do with this team, like how he wants to build it going ahead. And, you know, I'd like to be more optimistic about the Giants as a whole, especially after you see them pick Thibodeau and Neal, but it's kind of hard to do that right now.
Yeah, I feel like the Wan'Dale thing, and I'm with you guys. I didn't like the pick. That felt like something where somebody in the building asked for it. I'm interested to see if that's something that Mike Kafka wanted specifically, because otherwise, like you said, Gamma, what was on the board, it just doesn't truly, honestly make sense. Like that feels like something like the only way maybe you ask for that specifically if it's something like scheme specific that you felt you needed that the other guys don't do. But I mean, I don't see it. So, like I said, I just didn't get that pick. For me, what I was happy with them was they couldn't fail on the first 2 picks, and I feel like they didn't.
Right.
That was the most important thing was you had 2 top 15 picks, right? the main thing there for or is it
two top 10
picks?
picks? Yeah,
Sorry, 2 top 10 picks, right? My bad. There we go. Let me go up a little higher. So yeah 2 top 10 picks. For me, everything else you guys say, I agree with wholeheartedly. But honestly, as a new regime, your job was not to fail at 5 and 7. Anything else, like, look, we could talk about it. We could revisit it. I'll fix that next year. But you could not mess up at 5 and 7. And I guess that's the thing we'll get to see going forward. Is that is that going to be the staple for this new regime? Because again, like you said, Gamble, look at what you did with your first 2 picks in the top 10 versus what you did with the other picks. Where, no disrespect, there's some guys that you drafted later that are probably going to be better than the guys you drafted after the 2 top 10 picks, right? Or might be able to, I won't even say better, may be able to help you sooner. I'm trying to work on being more kind. So maybe be able to help you sooner than some of those guys that were picking between them, right? So even with like Cordell Flott, like I'm with you guys. I don't really get mad when folks, take a swing at LSU corners, just because for the most part, it's hard to miss with those guys. It's just a matter of the ones that are elite. There's usually a gap between those guys. And you could do far worse than taking an LSU corner, just like you could do far worse than taking. I'm comfortable if you take like a rotational dude at Bama, like in the mid rounds. I'm probably not going to get mad at you because Lord knows what he can actually do. He wasn't allowed to do it when he was there, and that's how I feel about the LSU kids sometimes too. As far as defensive backs, we just don't really know, and sometimes until they get to the league. But they hit on the. I feel like they hit on the 2 top 10 picks. And the Wan'Dale Robinson pick, man, that's something you're gonna have to answer about all year, especially with Kaderi. Like, I don't know if Walter told you, Gamble, but like my biggest draft crush this year was Tyquan Thornton. And I'm just like, when Bill traded up to go get him, I was like, my guy, y'all really let Bill go do this. But again, I also look, this is me personally, and I guess we'll find out in time. I also feel like them first 2 picks are just kind of like, man. If Daniel's here, he's here. If he's not here, he's not here. That was about going forward. These are 2 building blocks.
Yeah.
What if you got the quarterback? The quarterback thing's irrelevant. Like, I'm not going to pass on 2 dudes who I feel could set the table for this regime. That's up to Daniel to take advantage of it or not. That's Daniel's problem. But
I think the first 2 picks. No, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say an issue for me was just like you had a chance to have an A+ draft and you stopped. Like this could have been the draft to change your franchise if you hit on picks. We're not talking about 5th round picks. We're talking about pick 43, which is bordering on late 1st round, or like pick 43 and pick 67, and even 81 to a degree. If you hit on those 3 picks, we're talking about a roster because those first 2 picks you got. And I don't know if you've seen the Dallas League board. Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal were their top 2 players. So you might have got the 2 best players in the draft, and then the 3rd pick. Imagine you take Pickens there, who basically is the number 1 receiver in some people's eyes, except for character concerns. So if you have a chance to add the best tackle, possibly the best edge rusher, in the draft, and possibly the best receiver, or a top, like you could have changed your team, and you didn't. You took some guys some grab bag players, like you just reached in and pulled out some names that we're gonna run into some other teams who have 5th round picks, and we're like, that was a good pick. And we look at these guys and we're like, what you do? Like if you scramble those picks 3 through 7 up, no one could tell you, they took him at 7, they took him in the 3rd. It's no difference. Like a bunch of guys who might play special teams or may not make the team. You could have really got this new thing started off really strong, obviously minus the quarterback, but you could have really sent this thing in the right direction real fast with those first 2 picks and the rest of the draft. And I just feel like you missed.
It's not what they did, is what could have been, is what is
right.
More upsetting, right? Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's, I think, what could haunt them going forward. I mean, I don't think they'll look at it that way, but I think people on the outside looking in are going to look at it that way. We're like, all right, well, if you would have taken Brisker here and Nakobe Dean there and Tyquan Thornton there, you'd be a lot better team than this. But We'll see. I think you're right, though, Willie. Like, the Tibbs and Neal pick, even if those two bust, it's not even that big of a deal. Like, because everyone in the world would have taken those two players. So it's like they did what they were supposed to do. They steered the car and drove it where they're supposed to be. And now the rest of it is going to go, it's going to kind of fly under the radar because we're all going to glorify those first two picks, which we should. But like Ruckus said, it's upsetting, man. Yeah, they could have had a phenomenal draft, but what do you do?
I mean, that's the tough part when you what's it called? New regimes take over.
Yeah,
they rarely, like, if the times that they do end up hitting on like the franchise cornerstone type players, the rest of those drafts are usually bad. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm not. I'm just being honest. Like,
no.
Like, it's really weird, right? And then you'll find out later down the line, like, hey, that regime's pretty good at drafting mid rounds, but that first one, what were you all doing? I don't understand. What y'all were all, like? What? It doesn't make sense. Yeah. However, again, like you said, most important thing was we've seen other teams in similar situations. They drive the vehicle off the road, and there's no reason. Like, stay on autopilot, man. Do not grab the wheel. Do not do anything. Let the car drive itself. Just be quiet. Like, just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Let Alexa drive, and some teams don't do it. So, all right, on to the Eagles, who is everyone's popular choice in this division of having the greatest offseason ever per today.
How many wide receivers do they think they need on a team? That's what I'm confused about.
Okay, so in my non-petty way of asking, they're trying to build an NFL wide receiving core after realizing that maybe they were lacking some pieces for that to begin with.
Bro.
So technically, like, they saw Devontae last year. It was like, okay, grown up. Let's go get another grown up. You trade for AJ. And then, you start from there. But, yeah, they had some weird pieces at that position. Like, some really weird pieces.
Because they got Smith, AJ Brown, Hightower, Quez Watkins, Zach Pascal, Greg Ward, Jalen Reagor. Like, you can't play all of them, right? Or, like, you're not gonna. I just don't understand. Well, you know what? We'll get to that. Let's go. Yeah, someone else start with their offseason stuff, because I've been confused for a while on like what they're trying to do over here.
We had. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So,
I can't help myself.
had this conversation about the Eagles the other day. Like, it's funny because we talked about the Eagles 2 days ago, and we're like, man, they must be looking 2 years ahead. And then you look at the Bradbury signing, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe they win now. Like, it's just a weird, like, trying to figure out what the thought process is. And I think they're trying to win now and win in the future at the same. Like, we're gonna replace a couple guys with the guys who, with certain people, but we do want to win now because the division is there for the taking. But we don't know if Jalen Hurts is the guy, so we're gonna just put everything around him or the next guy because we have 2 draft picks next year. Like, it's a weird. We're here, but we're not here. I just feel like, again, when we get to the draft, I'll have some more complaints or whatever you want to call it. I feel like there was some holes. Bring Anthony Harris back. They had to bring Anthony Harris back. If you look at their depth chart, if Anthony Harris ain't there, they can't even play a game tomorrow. I think Anthony Harris is he's a quality player, but they're dependent on Anthony Harris. And then, different moves, because Kaiser White move at the time was a big move, which, we'll see later on. Hassan Reddick was a big move, especially with what they're trying to do now. I think they're gonna play more of a 3 down, but basically equate to basically 5 down, the 2 edges rushing all the time. So Reddick is the guy they're gonna be counting on big time. And then Barnett, 1 year, $14 million. I don't know what's that. I'm sorry, not 1 year, $14 million. For a 2-year contract. I'm sorry, for Barnett. It's like he's never been the guy that some people hyped him as, but he's okay. He's cool.
Yeah.
He's all right. And I think bringing Reddick in allows him to just be okay and not let the Philly fans go after him. So I think that's a perfect place for him. So I just know that the AJ Brown move again. Me and Gilmore had this conversation. Good question. Me and Gilmore had this conversation. Okay, with wide receiver being such a position you can draft for. Would you rather trade a 1 for a guy like Jesse Bates, and then have grabbed a receiver, or do what they did with no safety at all?
Okay, so while Jesse Bates is super intriguing, I think the reason they went the AJ Brown route is no disrespect to the guys not named Devontae Smith that they had at wide receiver last year. You had to go get people to help your quarterback. Because I think some of the times you were asking Jalen to do things he's not quite good at yet, and then getting mad at him for not being good at the things that he's not quite good at yet. But what you had on the outside, I mean, it was a whole bunch of like light in the pants type dudes. You're not throwing a whole bunch of sideline routes to them little itty bitty built guys, and that's where he's comfortable throwing. So again, and if you want to evaluate Jalen to determine if he is your guy, go get him what he needs so you can figure that out. And I do like Jesse Bates, but like again, I'd rather find out or be right, being comfortable knowing that I put everything around my quarterback to help him best succeed. And then if he didn't do it, that's me, and I still got weapons. And then I can move assets or whatever to go still get a chance to get a quarterback. But everyone is with this nasty Jalen conversation he's not this, he's not that, blah, blah, blah. Bruh, that position is so hard anyways. Two, there's that upper echelon, and after that, everybody is a bunch of mid. Nobody wants to say it. There's those top guys, it's a bunch of mid. And if he happens to be one of the more talented guys in the mid tier, we're gonna find out. Like, you don't just you don't move on just to move on. I don't like how he does this. I don't like how the coach calls plays. I'm sure Miles Sanders doesn't like it either. So again, go get him some things and let's figure it out there. And then you find out, all right. And if he is your guy, you could go in the next year's draft. You can take whatever's there, or you can auction off them picks to somebody who's down even more bad than you are at that position. And then if there's somebody Jesse Bates caliber next year, you do the same thing you did for AJ. I'll pay for it. Thank you very much for my already proven commodity. Thanks for playing. But that's just where I'm at on it. Like, I think a lot of people get out on young quarterbacks quick when they don't exactly surround them with the best things and then be like, oh, they didn't do this right. I mean, if you know what you drafted the kid to do and you're asking him to do the stuff he's not good at, I'm looking at you. But that's just me personally. Like, I think they did right in this scenario. And I like Jesse Bates, but their issue more so than anything, you need to get more explosive on defense in terms of your pass rush, because it's been lacking since you won the Super Bowl, right? I think both of you guys mentioned Derek Barnett. When he ate, it was because that line was juiced up so he could take advantage of things. So now go get you somebody where people got to go game plan for so he can eat again. Give him a little bit of money. That's quality depth. That's all that is on a good team. No, if he was on another team that a little bit more if he was on a contender, right, we'd be like, oh, man, that's a solid depth signing. And we call it a day. We wouldn't question anything or care too much. But it'd be a different story if they didn't have Hassan Reddick and you gave Barnett that money. Like, why are you asking Barnett to be something he can't be? So, that's kind of where I'm at with it. But with the wide receiver thing, I just think it's something – I think it's a transition in that room. And honestly, you at least need two guys, and you can rotate the rest of them. You could always rotate the other guys in the room. But last year, they didn't even have two guys.
Yeah, they had 1.5.
Yeah. You're like 1.3. And then the other thing, like when Jalen gets in trouble, what do we see a lot of times? Trying to throw comebacks or throw stuff on the sideline. Dudes is 125 pounds. They can't box anybody out. And then you want them to go over the middle. It's kind of hard to throw over the middle to dudes who weigh less than I do. But hey, it stinks. I bet you I probably feel a little bit more comfortable throwing over the middle when AJ Brown's AJ Brown size. Because I feel like the guy who's got to stop A.J. Brown is smaller than A.J. Brown, and is probably thinking, do I want to run into A.J. Brown? I'll take a wild guess and say he's a little bit more comfortable throwing over the middle with A.J. Brown running across the middle. But, on to the draft. My bad. Just like I keep saying, like, the stuff that's being said about some young quarterbacks is just wild to me. So it's just that's where I've been at. So apparently I've been triggered. I apologize.
No, I'm with you.
It's just I just need people to keep the same energy all the way around. That's all.
Our Sega Whiteside started last season wide receiver. Not US.
That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
All right, and because of the AJ Brown trade, obviously their drafts, they're not going to have as many selections draft-wise. That said, what do you guys think of their draft? Do you guys think they made the most out of it?
We've talked a lot about this Philly draft, Ruckus. I think so. Like I did the whole with the Giants. I looked at who they got, and I looked at who they could have had. With Philadelphia, I tried to do the same thing, but I can't argue. How should I put this? With what they're trying to do, which is the 3-man front, 2 deep, blah, blah, blah. Jordan Davis does fit. And I bet at that point he was probably rated higher for a lot of people or rated high for a lot of people. So they figured it's value. It fits what we want to do. I get that. So let's give him the Jordan Davis pick. Cam Jurgens is an athletic marvel as well. He's Ruckus said that he heard they let Kelsey pick his replacement for next year. Cool. Cam Jurgens is amazing. Amazing athlete. Hasn't even played football that long. He's going to go be a stud there. Guarantee it. So I get that pick. Then they get to the round 3. Nakobe Dean's magically on the board. All right. You can't argue with the value there. So when I went ahead and looked at the other scenarios of who was on the board still and who they could have got, honestly, I didn't come up with better than what they did. The problem for me is, especially on defense, where do they excel? Where are they dynamic? I think their offense is finally good enough to where you're right. We're going to find out who Jalen Hurts is, what he is. He has all the pieces in place, right? Offensive line, receiver, whatever. Defense, it's like they got solid. They don't have any glaring holes. And especially when they signed James Bradbury, which they did today. They signed James Bradbury, so they fill a corner. Because before that, I was like, they're butt at corner. They're going to have Avonte Maddox start outside. He's 5'3". That sucks. But they got Bradbury now. They're going to have Darius Slay. They got Wallace and Harris at safety. So that's And they added all these pieces. So, but I don't understand how they're going to get after the quarterback.
Yep.
With Barnett and Sweat. I mean, maybe they can. Okay. I don't understand what they think they're going to do to stop the rest of the NFC East. I don't know. You guys can probably articulate what I'm trying to say better because I didn't think it through ahead of time. But I just don't think they got a lot better on defense. They don't have an inspiring defense. They don't look great at it. But I don't think that they could have done much more in the draft with it. So I'm kind of at that spot. Howie Roseman did what he could, but I'm not necessarily sure he went into the draft with a solid plan ahead of time. We're going to crush it and look at how good we're going to be. It was he kind of just let it fall to him. And he's I guess we'll take him. And then we'll just see what happens after. It was like a kid playing Madden. He's well, this guy's on the board. But now, as a whole, I'm not sure they look good.
I think, and I'm going to take a guess of where you're trying to go with how you feel about the defense. I'm going to take a stab at it and tell me if I'm wrong. But it's you're looking for that one piece on defense that sets the tone, that stands out, that flashes. Yeah. And what they're going to be is a solid, disciplined unit at best. And I think for the most part, that's what folks are going to have to accept for this year, right? Next step for them is getting someone who can change a game on that side, right? And that's what I feel like you're saying they're lacking. Yes. And I would agree with you there, right?
Yes.
And I think you want to know where I think probably that decision, everything got flipped. I think they were probably we're going to go in on defense. We're going to go find someone where we have somebody like the other teams in our division have, at least a guy that can change a game, right, on defense. Then you find out who isn't happy in Tennessee. And you're hey, yo.
Right.
Defense is cool.
Get him.
However, how old is he? 24, you say. Bring him on down, right? You do what you got to do. You ask no questions. And I think, like you said, that feeling they did the best they could. And I think it's because you can't mention what they did on the defense side of the ball and omit the A.J. Brown part. You can't look at any part of their offseason and omit the A.J. Brown part because I feel like it's A.J. Brown and then their offseason.
And I think that's the hard part is everything I want to say to critique them, I'm well, I can make my own counter argument for that. So I'm well, all right, that's wrong. And then I'm well, I would have done this. I'm well, but they got A.J. Brown.
But never mind. But you see where it goes back to, right? But they got A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
And what we can't do is be I wouldn't have got A.J. Brown. No, exactly. You're going to be yes, take the picks. That's all, a first and a third? Sure. It's not even mine. Take it. So I think that's all it is. But at least for this year, on defense, it's solid. You hope you got a disciplined veteran unit, right? I liken it to like I know nobody cared about the Texans last year. They had a whole bunch of vets on that, like just really disciplined vets on that side of the ball last year. Nothing flashy, but they gave good teams, good offenses, they gave them hell because they were just boringly solid and disciplined. And some teams, even the more talented teams, the talented quarterbacks, a lot of them don't like to play slow. They just don't like it. So I'm with you. But again, like, I guess their gamble would be like, say Jalen's more comfortable. You figure out Jalen's your guy. You got two guys for Jalen offensively in the pass game. Right. You're going in next year. I'm swinging for the fence on defense. But you got to take this step to get to that place. And that's what sucks, right? You looked at those flashy defensive players. You look at what the other teams already have. But at the same time, you can look at some of the other teams in the division. With their quarterback issues, Jalen Hurts don't look too bad.
That's true. I guess they could come away from this next season thinking our defense kind of screwed us and didn't get us to the playoffs, but Jalen Hurts is our boy, and we have Brown and Smith for him.
Right. So what if you make the playoffs off the back of your offense, but you get to go in the next season with those 2 first-round picks you still have because you're loaded, and you get to go, DB, safety, 2 edges. And because you got the luxury, because the other people, some of the teams in your division, I'm not going to name no names, might end up in the same place looking for quarterbacks. You like, got ours. Hey.
True. Maybe we just talked ourselves into this.
I think that's the tough part, though, right? Is because it's A.J. Brown and then the offseason. Because, like, their offseason, it was for free pre-A.J. Brown. Like, okay, it's a stop, nothing too exciting in free agency. Splash, I got A.J. Brown. Hey, look at what we did with the rest of our picks after getting A.J. Brown. And I think that's where you kind of were with it, where I did the same thing. I can't say you would have done better because one of your first and thirds this year was A.J. freaking Brown. So
So basically add him to the draft picks, and you're like, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, so if you add him to it, if ideally in this draft, they got A.J. Brown and Jordan Davis in the first round. And now look at the draft, and you're like, damn, that's not bad.
Right.
The only issue I have, honestly, is that for a team that that offense is pretty loaded. And hope it's dependent on Jalen Hurts a lot, and the offensive coordinator, but they didn't. None of the first 3 picks are mainly for next year. Jordan Davis is coming in, but you re-sign Fletcher Cox, and you have
Hargrave.
And then Jurgens isn't playing this year because Kelsey's back, and then Kobe Dean is coming off injury and all that stuff.
He's got to beat out T.J. Edwards too. So
so you're like saying you're ready to make a playoff run and see what Jalen Hurts is, but we didn't add anybody except for A.J. Brown. And that's the thing where you're gonna, like you said, Jalen Hurts can have a great season, and they go 7-9 or 7-10, and they were like, oh, Jalen Hurts didn't get us to the playoffs, but we're just good enough where we have to trade all these picks and a third to try to get one of these other guys while competing with the Giants and the Redskins who are bad or whoever who want this pick. Like they're in a weird spot because they're too good to be terrible. Like Jalen Hurts has to be the guy, unless they're gonna make a move and get an angry Kyler Murray, or something like that. It's like they have 2 1s next year, but they're kind of loaded on offense, which Jalen Hurts isn't going to be terrible. That's the thing. Jalen Hurts isn't going to be bad. So you're going to have to decide, is Jalen Hurts, can he win us a Super Bowl, or do we want to replace him and hope that one of these young guys is better than him? Because he's off his legs and his work ethic and all the things he has and the talent around him, you're going to be a solid team. And you're in this division. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you're going to be a solid team. And then defensively, there's just holes there. Like, I don't know. Again, I can't question which pick they should have made or shouldn't have made, because Jordan Davis is for that defense. Like, what they're trying to do defensively, Jordan Davis was drawn up for that. But they're not going to be dependent on Jordan Davis because of the current guys. So Jordan Davis is going to learn some pass rush moves or whatever the case may be. And then Jurgens isn't going to play. And it's the right picks, but it's just a weird situation of seeing what they're trying to do.
You want to know what it is? They're one of those teams that, like, they're in that weird place where they didn't do good enough to prove that they can contend, right? But if you look at them through the lens of it, like a year later and they did this, you'd be like, all right, cool, we're good, because it makes more sense, because the roster's more rounded out. They just, it's one step went before the other. And that's why it feels super weird. Because like you guys say they finish, they finish sub 500, don't make the playoffs. A bunch of people can be up in arms, but in their building, and it feels like they're saying it without saying it, they're comfortable with the guy under center. You went and got him an expensive toy to possibly grow old with him and Devontae. But defensively, like, it is what it is. You're not going to be great defensively this year. But again, you also made that decision when you gave up, when you pretty much traded into the first round next year. Like, that was also part of that. You know what I'm saying? It's just a matter that some of those decisions aren't lining up when people would like them to line up. And that's the awkward part. And I would say, not to you guys, but like even Eagles fans, relax. Like, no matter what happens this year, relax. There are teams that might do better than you this year that are going to be looking up at you next year just by virtue of what they didn't handle. Just because of what they didn't handle. There's going to be somebody with a better defense that might have a better year. They're going to go into next year and not have a quarterback. Then they're going to go into offseason and might have to throw half of – they might have took 2 steps forward and go 4 steps back to get a chance to get a quarterback, and maybe they select the wrong guy. But for you get to go into next year again with nothing but ammo, and it's like the reverse Bengals, right? The Bengals took the wide receiver, didn't take the offensive lineman. Everybody got blah, 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 whatever. They make a Super Bowl run despite the trash offensive line, and they went into this offseason like, oh, we're just going to fix our offensive line, and anything else that we get, cool, great. But we got to see them make a run first. So if the Bengals did what they did, but they didn't make that run this year, but they did it a year later, people would have been like, well, the Bengals messed up. And they didn't mess up taking Chase. They just didn't make a Super Bowl run. But the Super Bowl run happened. It is what it is. Yeah. But, like, I'm not mad at what Philly did. It's just the order in which it happened. But some of that comes from previous decisions. Like, we can go back to the draft with Jalen Hurts. Why ain't y'all load up on – how come you ain't hit on defense in that draft? Or the draft before that?
When they took 5 receivers or whatever?
When you were busy striking out on wide receivers, you could have built your defense. You know what I'm saying? Just like that's the hard part about it. Is like a lot of teams, those past misses or whatever, or those past bad decisions, it's gonna catch up to you. And just for the Eagles, this is gonna be one of them years where even if they do bad, I'm chilling because it's like if you have your guys, technically you got your people, right? Relax. You get to go into next year. You could go back-to-back edges, lock them in for 5 years, and enjoy your life.
Next year, so like this year is all their picks basically have no impact. Next year is when they're going to take impact players.
And the only reason I'm saying this is the team I rooted for did something like this, and I watched my fan base go nuts. But the difference is that the team I root for made a postseason run, so like it's a little bit different technically because in people's eyes it's like, well, you made the postseason. But technically, they had a whole draft full of people for not even the guy under center. Whole draft pick. The whole draft board had nothing to do with that year that they drafted him. It was for the future. So, like, that's why I'm just saying, like, with Philly, like, y'all could be mad. Y'all could feel any type of way you want it. You got A.J. Brown. Sit down, shut up, and be quiet. And hope that the kids, like, that young offense, that offensive core, hope that they gel and take a step this year. And however it works out is however it works out. But what you do have is wherever you want to put Jalen Hurts on that spectrum of what today's quarterback is, you have one of those guys physically. Get over it. There's some teams that don't have that. Just get over it. Like, you might not be at the top of it, but
I got a question for you. What if they didn't trade that pick for next year, okay, and you leave this draft with everything you left with, and you leave with what people think Kyle Hamilton is? Or
I would have took what you did this year over it.
I'm saying, okay, you don't make that trade. You have all these picks. You have Jordan Davis. You have all those quarterbacks. You have all people I'm the quarterback. I'm sorry. Jordan Davis. You have Jurgens. You have A.J. Brown. You have whoever else, right? But then you leave this draft with Kyle Hamilton or McDuffie or, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're trying to win this year, you're better. But this, like right now, they kind of like save themselves for next year if Jalen Hurts isn't the guy to go get a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Because with that other pick, you have the same exact draft that you had, except you have that other one that you gave the Saints for next, next year, for this year, whatever the case may be. And now you grab that. Like, this might help you win this year, but the other move is like, is next year's draft better? Where do the Saints finish the season? Like, that whole game. You know what I mean? I was just wondering, like a hypothetical of, if you throw Kyle Hamilton in this draft, or you throw Baxter
maybe
Dale,
this is like maybe this is proof though that like Howie Roseman is just as confused as us if Jalen Hurts is his guy.
Yeah.
Like he's not, like Willie said, like if he did that, then there might be excuses for Jalen and they might be valid. Now he's like, bro, I don't care if we suck D on defense. We're gonna find out who Jalen is. That way next year we know what's up. And because I think like that's everyone on Twitter and everyone everywhere is arguing about Hurts. How do we know his own GM? I mean, honestly, if you watch Hurts so far, it's really hard to have an argument one way or another that is solid or strong. Like both, you could say he sucks or he's great, and you have a pretty good shot at being right either way. And maybe Howie is thinking the same thing. So this is the make or break year for him, and this draft might prove that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I'm probably in a little bit even more different space with it. I take it as a sign to go get AJ Brown. Like, honestly, for me personally, I know it wasn't words because I know people like to hear things for whatever these days. They need certain people like the leaders to say exactly what they want to hear. I felt like you don't go get AJ Brown if you didn't think the kid was okay. There's no reason to do that. There's literally no reason. So like on a baseline level, you're like, I'm cool with you. I'm cool with you. Let me go get you something special that could maybe elevate you a little bit. And it is what it is.
True.
Like at the very baseline, we could do far worse than you than what's under center in these leagues. And like, no disrespect to some of the QBs that came out. Like, I mean,
Yeah, especially this year.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Like everybody always wants to move on for something or be like, oh, the kid didn't improve fast enough. If y'all don't sit down and be quiet, like the sad part is, say Jalen, quote unquote, didn't work, they'd be out there looking for somebody just like Jalen physically. And that's what makes it stupid. So you might as well sit down, be quiet, exhaust everything you can with this kid and call it a day. Because if you got to go back in there to look for not Jalen, what's the point?
That's fair.
What's the point? Like everybody's big mad about everything. It's like, but y'all gonna go back in the draft and tell me the traits. All right, Jalen does that. Jalen does that. What else are you looking for? Oh, okay, he does. How many years started in college you prefer? We checked all the boxes. Look, we're right back here with somebody that just their name isn't Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's fair.
So again, you don't go get AJ Brown without that. Like in my mind, like that's a move where it's like, all right, kid, let's run. Like you guys are gonna have to carry the team this year because the defense ain't it.
And we've seen enough to know he's not bad.
Yeah, and I thank you.
Yeah, like I hated him coming out of college because he's not a volume thrower.
Mm-hmm.
He's confused a lot. He bails out of clean pockets. He rolls right only. But we've seen enough in the NFL. Like, can he run? Yes. Is he sturdy? Yes. Does he have enough arm? For the most part. Is he a smart kid? Yes. Is he coachable? Is he a good teammate? Yes. So you're right. He does check most of the boxes. It's just, is he going to be the guy or not?
And I think that's
a fine line.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like Justin and I talk all the time. Like, is he going to be the truck or the trailer? And if he's the trailer, you can do far worse physically, gift-wise, if he's the trailer. And that's all I'm saying. Like in terms of where I feel like they're trying to figure out if he's the truck or the trailer or not. And if he's the trailer, right, you can do far worse physically if that's your trailer. So if he is the trailer, you go get AJ Brown. Hey, buddy, come be a truck. Come pull him along just in case. Either y'all gonna do this together or drag you and Devontae, drag the offense. So be it. At least I'm getting my money's worth out of AJ, whether the kid's the truck or the trailer.
Right. I just hope that they don't find out Jalen's not the guy, and then you have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith waiting on the guy.
But again, this is the luxury though. If he's not the guy, you can the picks mean nothing to you because the rest of your roster's rounded out. So at least if you could get past next year where you got the extra picks, right? Or you say you want to move on from Jalen by the time his contract's up, you would have had next year's draft with those double first-round picks or a heavy defensive draft. Then the following year, whatever those assets are, who cares? Put the chips on the table. I need to go get up and get a quarterback. It is what it is.
That's right.
But, there's other ways to look at it. Last but not least, the Washington Commanders, because everybody loves the Commanders, and Walters refuses to call them by their name, but, by their name.
He just forget. He's like a stubborn old man. He just
those are the Redskins in my day. That's what they're going to be. Sorry. The Commanders it is. Hold on. Dorian, one of the resident Eagles fans, said he expects them he thinks they're going 12-5 this
year. It's possible.
Maybe in that division, yeah. It is possible.
All right, so speaking of quarterbacks, right? Nice segue.
Go.
You got Carson Wentz they acquired in the trade this summer. They brought back J.D. McKissick, who was about to go to the Bills, and then somebody reneged somewhere, and here he came back. Cam Sims, Cornelius Lucas, veteran guard Andrew Norwell, veteran guard Trey Turner, Tyler Larson re-signed, F.A. Obata, Bobby McCain, and Joey Sly is what they did in free agency. You guys' thoughts on that? Here you go.
I mean, Bobby McCain's going to start, I believe. So that's interesting. I don't know if he's a high-level starter. I think he's solid enough, but I don't love that. I mean, well, he feels a need. So good signing. We'll just go there. Trey Turner, I don't know what level. I don't know which Trey Turner they're getting. When he's on, he's on. When he's healthy and on, he's a good player. I don't know. Some of those big guy guards fall off fast. I didn't really watch a whole lot of him last year, but he could be a good signing. Norwell, kind of the same, probably just more of a depth thing. I don't know. I think the Carson Wentz, we got to talk about that because I don't think I've ever known who Carson Wentz is. It's like he started off horrible in Philly. Then he had a great year. Since then, it's like he's leveled out into this confusing old guy, really smart quarterback that makes really silly decisions, but is almost physically gifted enough to where you're like, well, screw it, we'll look past it. But if like the average fan was like, hey, is Carson Wentz a good quarterback? I don't know what I'd tell him. You know what I mean? And that's so it's almost like when someone asks me like, hey, do you think the Commanders will be good? I'm like, I don't know. Is their quarterback good? I don't know. They drafted okay. They signed some solid pieces. They're a well-rounded roster. They got a good pass rush, but I don't know what Wentz really means to this team. Is where I'll leave it right now.
Yeah, no, for me, he's like too old to be a project. Like it's just a weird, like that risk you're taking on a guy of you're hoping you get Carson Wentz from 4 years ago, 3 injuries and like because there was a time when like I remember Carson Wentz dragging that Eagles team, not the year after the Super Bowl. I remember him dragging that team to the playoffs, making big plays and clutch play late in games, and it's like the physical tools are there, but the mental just doesn't add up. And you're hoping you get it, but it's a little late for that, in my opinion. And the team to watch last year and then say we're going to trade picks for him when the Eagles were cheering about trading him, and the Colts were like, "How are we going to get rid of this guy?" And you traded for him. It's just a weird move for them because, again, like you said, if you look at that roster, it's a really solid roster. If you put the right quarterback on this team, like if they were to somehow have gotten one of the upper tier quarterbacks, this would be a legit, board up a team that you could argue could contend. So I think it's really dependent on him. I think they added Norwell and added Lucas or Turner like their guard tackle position, and they have solid players. It's just again you're hoping that I don't like the fact that I guess they're going to walk away from Deron Payne at some point. I guess that was the word they were trying to trade Payne, and I mean I could argue Payne was one of their best guys. So that bothered me some. But again, if they have depth on that defensive line, for some reason took a major step back last year, but there's so much talent over there. It's hard to think they're not gonna be back. And then You hope you get Jamin Davis to step up at linebacker, have a better second year. But there's players there. There's a talent in secondary. There's different players. It's just, again, it's a lot of it is dependent on Carson Wentz. And we'll get to that draft. You can make comments either way on that draft, but there's a talented roster, and you just hope that Carson Wentz can be average.
Offensively, it's a lot like Philly, where it's like, this is a really good team, like really good. You put the right quarterback here, but I think Washington's in a worse spot because at least Hurts could be ascending, and we'll find out what he is. Wentz, I mean, I don't want to say in a worse spot, but Wentz could be bad, and we think he's supposed to be good. And so it's interesting because you're like, you sign this vet who's supposed to be like the guy that sets all these young pieces over, and it's like we're not looking to the future anymore. With Hurts, you're looking ahead like, oh, this is, he's going to become this, or he could. If Wentz sucks, then right away like, God dang it, like there's nothing more. You're not going to get more. He's not going to get coached out of this. So, yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I think he can be obviously a really good player. He's a gifted dude, but you look at this draft and everything, and all the pieces that they have and that fill in certain spots, and it's easy to like this team for sure. It's easy to like their receiving corps. They have Gibson at running back. Yeah, they should be good. They should be good. We can get to the draft. Sorry, I didn't even.
No, you're good. I was just unmuting myself. I was trying to make sure it wasn't muted because I was trying not to laugh too much at the Carson. But yeah, like Carson once again is a poster child for why the Eagles did what they did. Like, again, it can always be worse where you're in that situation where you just don't know. You can say whatever you want to say about Jalen. At least there's some like baseline of consistency for what he currently is. We're trying to figure out how much room up top, like where can he get to? Or is this it? You know what I'm saying? Which is a totally different conversation than this one with Washington, whereas you trade for somebody where is there a plus? Or is this it? And if this is it, was it worth the ammo to do it? If you're going to end up right back here to do the same thing, and at least Philly, worst case scenario, say Jalen Hurts fell off a cliff. They got 2 1s.
And he was young, and
totally different discussion. And I guess I just wanted to bring up just the difference between the conversations because the Jalen thing is how good can he be? Because you just need to know, right? And that's the thing. And people always want to quantify something, and being unknown sends people in football circles crazy about quarterbacks. Like, if it's unknown, it's got to be bad. No, how about you just let it play out? But here's an example where it's played out a little bit. Yeah. And people are either denying it, not accepting it, or what have you. But if you're Washington, for Carson, this might be his last stop or whatever, right? And if you're Washington, you didn't have to do this. Especially when you took that's the thing. So it's like, if you were going to swing, I'd probably swing on something that might be younger, that isn't fully set in there. Like, I just feel like he is who he is, and I'm just not a fan of who he is because I think this stuff that like he almost like self-sabotages himself because he doesn't know how to give up on a play or let a play die. And I think sometimes when you're a guy who could do that a little bit and then it's not there anymore, you don't know how to act. Where if you're somebody where at least, like you said, you're coachable, you're solid here or whatever, it's just like, hey, plays dead. Cool. I could run, but plays dead. And he never matured from the rookie him of, I can do everything. I'm Superman. I drag the Eagles. Bro, just throw the ball away. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. Yeah. He's almost like he's literally the point as to why Philly, I'm just going to go get AJ Brown. Like, whatever you might not be, Jelly, you might not be everything we want you to be, but we know who you are. There's a baseline of, for the most part, you take care of the ball. You might not ever have a year where you throw 30 touchdowns or something like that. It is what it is. We watching Ryan Tannehill out here. Nobody thinks Ryan Tannehill is upper echelon of anything, but he's a solid guy with some traits, and we live with it. But Carson,
I think we know who Tannehill is. Carson's.
Thank you.
We don't know who he is, so it's really hard to talk about him and what he brings to a team because you're like, bro, I don't really know what he'll do on any given down.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing. And that's the sad part. The younger dude, we're just trying to figure out where's the ceiling because we don't know. Everyone's disagreeing on the ceiling, not the floor. With this guy, we're kind of like, we're not talking about the ceiling anymore. It's like, can we get the floor to a place that we're comfortable with?
Yeah.
You're almost hoping for the rookie version of him. Like you're hoping to see second year Carson Wentz in year 8, which is crazy.
And that's silly because like you said, Willie, they didn't need to do this. Mm-hmm. They didn't need to go get Carson. So now that they do, it's like, do they really believe in him? And what does that even look like? If you believe in Carson, let's say you're Carson Wentz's biggest supporter. You say, I believe in this guy. What does that look like? Like who is he if you believe in him? How good is he if you believe in him? I don't know. And I've watched every game Carson Wentz has ever played, and I'm still confused, like what he is, what he'll bring to a team. If he'll check the ball down, if he'll hit the crosser underneath, or if he'll throw the post into single high coverage. Like, I don't know. But the fun thing about him is if you're watching the games, the defense has to cover every blade of grass.
Yes.
Because the man can do anything. Yep. So it's almost like watching Flacco at one point where you're like, he sucks, but at least he's going to throw the ball far, and that'll be cool to see.
But you want to know what? And that's the thing almost. Like, that's kind of where they are with it, right? Because they've had the opposite of that under center where,
that's true.
It's Terry McLaurin, bro. They're open. Just put it out there. Yeah. For the love of God, put the ball out there. Like, they got a track team over there. Just put the ball out there. That's all we're asking you to do is when they have 3 steps on a good corner, can you not put the corner back into the play, please?
Yeah.
Can you just let them go get it?
I am glad we don't have to watch Heineke this year. Yeah, that would be cool.
And that's the weird thing. Like you said, just not knowing who somebody is versus knowing who somebody is, limitations and all, it's different. And they're not knowing, man. But to their draft, where they, John Dotson, Fidrian Mast, which Washington fans were initially really upset about because y'all just be mad. Brian Robinson, they went Alabama, surprise. They've done that many times before. Percy Butler, Sam Howell, Cole Turner, Chris Paul, Christian Holmes was their final pick in the 7th round. So you guys, let me know what you think about their draft.
For me, the Dotson pick, as much as it's like kind of a reach, it's really not because in my mind I think he's better than 2 receivers that won't perform. So that's where it gets interesting for me. I don't know if they needed him. Like, I feel like they have other holes, and their receiving core isn't too bad considering they still have De'Ami Brown there, who's they picked last year. I feel like I don't hate that pick, and I think Dotson. I like Dotson better than Olave. I wasn't a big the kid that Atlanta took. I wasn't a big fan of him either. So I don't hate the pick. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of him either. But so, I like Dotson a lot. 16 seemed early, but the receiver run went crazy. So they kind of, if you wanted him, you had to take him. The next 2 picks were reaches, and I'm a big Brian Robinson guy, man. But there's Brian Robinson's every draft. You can get a Brian Robinson in round 4, 5, 6, and that's what bothered me. Especially you're the Commanders, and there's holes there. There's things that need to be fixed. And Brian Robinson in round 3, when you could have got, the kid the kid from Georgia, Zeus White, could have got him in the 4th round. You could have got similar guys in the 5th or 6th, and that's why I don't like that pick. Percy Butler, the safety, he probably could contribute. I guess definitely special teams and work his way on as maybe play Bobby McCain's role at some point. Again, I just feel like there's not enough guys who are going to contribute tomorrow or today. That's the issue. Is like you're pretty if you're putting all those eggs in the Wentz basket, and I felt like the only person who is going to play is Dotson, and then Mathis is going to be rotational because they're not going to play him over Payne. He might be the Payne replacement at some point, but he's a far drop off from what Payne is, and I think that's the thing for me. I just don't think he's a good enough player. And again, Robinson, he hits the hole and does some things that Gibson doesn't do, but it's just, it's going to be the basic stuff. the 4 or 5 yards. Get 5 yards when it's there, get 6 yards when it's there. He's not running away from anybody. He's not a big play guy. I just think you could have did more. You could have done more with this draft. And again, I didn't go through the list of who was available, but you could have did more.
I got you. I got you. Let's play the what if game real quick. So they got Jahan Dotson, probably playing the slot. Sure-handed, fast, but not overly dynamic, right? Then they got Fedarian Mathis, who we could probably all agree is a little bit of a reach. If they, in the first round, instead of taking Jahan Dotson, took Devontae Wyatt, we can agree Devontae Wyatt is better than Fedarian Mathis. Devontae Wyatt might have been the best defensive lineman in the entire class. A lot of people had him over Jordan Davis. Then in the second round, when Fedarian Mathis was there, they could have taken Sky Moore, who was probably a little more dynamic than Jahan Dotson, a stronger player. And some people argued he was better than Dotson. So, you're getting a pretty even player. Some might say better. How was that not? So would you prefer Dotson and Mathis or Devontae Wyatt and Sky Moore? And then when Brian Robinson was taken, you had Channing Tindall on the board, Leo Chenal. They could have taken Jeremy Ruck. Well, I don't really need that. But let's stick with linebacker. They could have taken Tindall or Chenal or Perry and Winfrey, the defensive tackle from Oklahoma, Kobe Bryant, the corner from Cincinnati. There were good players on the board. And I think, Ruckus, you said like the wide receiver run spooked them and they panicked and took Jahan Dotson. But I think they could have had a better combination of things. I don't think they're I like to look at the tendencies. Like, did they take athletes? Did they take solid players? And this one, even if they took solid players, it doesn't look like they took the best ones. This is one of those draft classes where initially you could say, oh, they added some good players, but when you look at who was still on the board, it's not the same. And a lot of times in hindsight, it's not about who the team took, it's about who they didn't take that is more impactful. And this is one of those draft classes to me.
Yeah, so I think my biggest issue with the first three, I didn't like the second round pick. That's where I had the biggest issue is because you could have figured a way out to pay both Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne and just replace one of them edges. So I don't know what you're doing. Two, not there. Okay, you could have still got him later. You didn't have to take him there. And like Gamble said, if Wyatt, like you said with the Sky Moore thing, I'm cool with Dotson, but if you could have gotten Wyatt there, you take Wyatt. Because my whole thing is, if we want to play the replace game for Deron Payne, which is an issue you chose to have, you created by yourself, I'm swinging for the fence when I do it. Like physically, production-wise, I'm swinging for the fence. I feel like you did it. I feel like what you got is, I think Mathis is going to be very solid, but you took him in the second round. And I think even with Robinson, I agree with you guys. You probably could have took something else there, but I think this comes back to a previous issue. You took Gibson when you took him that year, and you never paired him with a dude who played running back his entire life. And now we get to this year with Gibson, and it's kind of like, damn, dog, you kind of leaving some yards on the field more often than not, right? So then you look at Robinson, it's like, and I know it wasn't a sexy pick or anything else, but for me, it's almost a necessity because if you look at their running back room with Gibson, McKissick, and now Robinson, who's the only dude you feel like if the chain's at 2 yards or 3 yards, that's going to get me 4 yards on 3rd and 3, or 5 yards or 3rd and 4, or 4th and 4, something like that. None of them other dudes even physically built like that. And maybe the transition with Gibson is maybe you can try to use him more as an offensive weapon. Because I just don't think in this scheme, using him as running back is just not a good thing for all parties as your lead guy.
Yeah.
That's just not it. So I think that's what led to the Robinson pick. But like with Dotson, I was dumb high on Dotson. But I think they fumbled into Dotson. I don't think they traded down with the intent of getting Dotson. They traded down to get some extra picks. And then there was a run on wideouts. And it was like, oh, Dotson.
Yeah.
I think they went full Cowboys, and it just worked out. Like, I love John Dotson. I like him more than a couple folks that went before him. But I don't think that they had Dotson that high. it just worked out that way where he was there. And I wish him the best with it, but that's on them. I wasn't a big fan of their draft. And we were having a conversation with the AJ Brown thing where you can't mention the draft without omitting AJ. We're here with Carson, except I feel way better about the AJ thing than the Carson thing in this draft.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like opposite ends of the spectrum here. So, like I like Dotson, I like Robinson. I don't like the rest of the draft as a whole. I just don't. And I like Mathis. I think he's tough, but if I'm cool with Percy, I don't have an issue with Percy Butler. I'll take it back. So Dotson, Robinson, and Butler, I'm cool with. Mathis, you didn't have to take that man that high. And at that place, you probably could have got a different safety right then. You really could have. You could have got a different interior lineman, to try to replace Payne or what have you. But yeah, man, I wasn't a big fan, man. That's just
like you said earlier about wanting more higher ceiling. Like a guy like Winfrey, who I think went in the 3rd or 4th round, has a much higher ceiling. Like he's a one tech who actually makes plays. So like I could see him taking that chance and getting him a round or two later. You're getting a player that with a ceiling. Like if you're replacing Payne, who's a 1st round pick, with a talent, at least a guy like Winfrey has.
Oh, we lost our boy.
But you guys got the gist of it. Just talking about if you're gonna swing, you swing big. You go. Yeah. You always go big traits if you're gonna swing and try to replace somebody, because you're never gonna replace them like 1-to-1. But you're gonna swing on, like I always say, like if you're gonna swing, you swing on a metahuman. You don't swing on. They're gonna be solid. Nah, man.
Well, it's simple. Like if you're gonna replace one dude with another dude, at least make sure he has the capability physically to be that guy.
Thank you.
Or
at least,
or when he leaves, you downgraded, no matter what.
Yep.
So cool.
At least,
yeah.
At the very least, be physically capable to do something similar to that person. So then we're just like, all right, dude, is better at a couple things than you, but man, you at least bring the size, what have you. We didn't lose on the athlete, but
yeah.
Like, it just felt super cowboyish to me. What happened with Dotson?
I was just going to ask, how do we think Washington looks compared to the rest of the division this next year? Do we think they're dead last, or do they have potential to be better than Philly or the Cowboys? I think the Giants, they could be better than, but could they be better than the Cowboys or Philadelphia?
I would say possibly better than the Cowboys, just because I like their depth better.
Okay.
Just because, like, if something happens to the top line guys on the Cowboys, like, bro, that's it. Let's sit down and get ready for. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's get ready for next year, right? Like, at
Ruckus
least for
doesn't want to
Washington,
hear that, but yeah.
At least for Washington, like, God forbid something happens to Terry, like, you still got Diami, Curtis, Jahan.
Now you got Dotson.
Like, like there's bodies. Like, if CD go down in Dallas, like, bro, it's getting bleak. Gallup's already. You don't even know what Gallup's looking like right now, right? Like, He might come back and need a year to be what he was before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And in that process, you're not going to like it. So, for the depth reason, I think Washington got a chance. But, like, obviously, if everyone's healthy, I'm taking Dallas because they're quarterback.
Right. Darn right.
The quarterback.
Yeah.
The rosters ain't that much better than each other.
I think Washington and Philly were right there with each other. But Philly made the moves to separate themselves from Washington. I think that's the big thing. Like, I think, like we said, we looked at both those rosters, and you're like, man, they're solid here, they're solid here, they're solid here. Like, oh, man. But for Washington to make that jump, obviously going to need something from Wentz, but that defensive line is going to have to be dominant. Like, that's the one thing they have working for them. And like we said, I think Dak is a big difference. I think he's a head and shoulders above the rest of the quarterbacks in this division. And I think that's what holds Dallas up. Again, Dallas has, and again, obviously they need to stay healthy. And again, the weapon skill position wise, there's questions with Dallas. To me, I need to see, can Land be the one, and what everyone else has to do up next to that. What is Zeke? Does he take another step back, or do they give Tony Pollard carries? The offensive line better or worse? Is it equal? It's been falling off anyway. That's the question with Dallas. The defense slightly better, slightly worse. Washington has pieces, and you just really don't know. I mean, they can go anywhere from 5 wins to 11 wins, and that's a big range.
I think this division is the hardest one to talk about, like every year, because all 4 teams, it's like none of them do this or this consistently. They all just kind of like back and forth, a little bit up, a little bit down, and none of them, I don't know. It's like none of them stand out as teams who scare anybody any given year. Like that's the hard part with this division. No one scares anybody.
And I think it's because, like what you said, is they all go about adding things and losing things in similar fashions, but none of them ever build up their rosters enough to the point where there's enough like that. It's like from top to bottom, the roster just good enough. You're like, that's one of the best rosters in the league.
Yeah, there's no staying power.
Yeah.
Like Green Bay every year, you're like, even if Rodgers leaves, like look at like they'll figure it out. Something's they have staying power. The Rams staying power. These teams is like, bro, they could be winless one year and I wouldn't question it.
And that's like you said, the staying power thing. There's never continuity for these guys.
Yeah.
Like even when they try, it's only in a certain area. Then somewhere else, it's off a cliff. Like they're in one of the circles of hell looking up. Like okay, we got to figure this out, but we didn't spend any resources here. Oh no, why did you do that? Why are y'all like this as a whole, as a group, every year? Why are y'all like this? But yeah, man, this was fun. Next time we come back, we'll do another division. So we'll see what happens. But you guys have a great evening. Appreciate you guys.